entry in a grammar or a dictionary. So the textual function provides texture. It's like what? It's like if we want to resemble it, so we can resemble it by the shirt, this shirt, and the cloth. The cloth it's made of. So the cloth, sorry, is the raw material for this shirt. So it's like what? It's like the textual function. Textual function of language provides the texture, and throughout the texture, language can work interactionally, as socially, as lively as the user intends to make this message. The major point in understanding these meta functions of language, the major point that Highland is different from all other meta-discourse researchers is that Highland understood the holistic function of these meta functions. And he understood, he understood the three functions holistically rather than separately. And we are going to see how does Highland understand this. So now we finished phase number 1 about the evolution and the development of the meta-discourse concept and theory from different disciplines. Now we come to the second phase. The second phase relates to the key concepts of meta-discourse. What are the key concepts, the essential concepts all meta-discourse researchers and those who are interested in studying meta-discourse should understand? The first important key concept is that the meta functions of language expressed and defined and explained by Halliday should be understood holistically rather than separately. When we understand the meta functions separately, for example, I'm going to give you an example. If we, for example, know the ideational function of language and we separate it from the textual function of language, so the language or any text doesn't give us separate and individual functions of language. These three meta functions work together, complement each other to give you the message. We should not separate them, as what has been already done by meta-discourse researchers before Highland. They understood that textual is separate from interpersonal and interpersonal is separate from ideational. So they said that meta-discourse has, or the major categories of those meta-discourse researchers such as Van Koppel, Chris Mortal, other meta-discourse researchers, they said that we have two functions for meta-discourse: the textual, that organizes the text, organizing the text, and all the functions of textual, textual meta-discourse is focused on what? Focused on the text itself and its organization. On the other side, we have the interpersonal function of meta-discourse. The interpersonal function of meta-discourse are those meta-discourse markers that show direct interaction with readers. Direct interaction with readers. So they separate them from each other. What Highland did is that, as you might see in this slide, Highland has developed his model of meta-discourse from the Hallidian holistic view of the meta functions of language, rather than the separate understanding of these functions perceived erroneously by other meta-discourse researchers. So According to Highland, all meta-discourse researchers preceding him erroneously understood these meta functions. They separate them from each other. They separate these functions from each other. However, what Highland did is that he understood that each and every meta function of language works together with the other meta functions, complementing the other meta functions, and work together to convey the meaning of the message. So they should be taken together. This is the first key concept of meta-discourse, understood by what? Understood by Highland, and not by other meta-discourse writers. So this is Highland, and on the left side, and put in Highland's words, and this is meta-discourse, of course, to explain something. This is coding gloss. For Halliday, these meta functions don't operate independently and secretly, but also is what is a meta-discourse. And sometimes I refer to these meta-discourse, but not all of them, to give you an example how meta-discourse works here. So for Halliday, these meta functions don't operate independently and discretely, but are expressed simultaneously in every utterance. The meaning of a text lies in the integration of all three functions. As I already explained, one important key concept of meta-discourse is that the meta functions of language by Halliday should be understood holistically rather than separately, because they work together in order to interact, in order to convey the message of the writer or of the speaker. So Highland understood the missing jigsaw here, the missing jigsaw piece to solve or to present another robust and clear-cut understanding of meta-discourse. That's why he built his interpersonal model of meta-discourse on this understanding, okay, as we are going to see his model. Also, the key concepts of meta-discourse, we have meta-discourse is recognized by all meta-discourse researchers. All meta-discourse researchers, including Highland, consider meta-discourse as non-topical, non-propositional, contentless. They differentiate between two types of the discourse. We have proposition on the one hand, and we have meta-discourse on the other hand. What is proposition should not be meta-discourse. The meaning of proposition, content, and the topical piece of text refer to what? To thoughts, ideas, external experiences that refer to ideas outside the text. Outside the text, we have ideas. Those ideas are referred to as what? As non-topical, contentless, as non-propositional. So all meta-discourse researchers, including Highland, distinguish meta-discourse from proposition. So this is one key concept, or among the key concepts of recognizing meta-discourse from proposition. What is meta-discourse and what is proposition? What functions as meta-discourse and what functions as a proposition? The other key concept, all meta-discourse researchers agree that meta-discourse as a whole refers to the presence of the writer, reader, and the message. And here we have this photo explaining or gives some indication about this meaning. So here we have what? We have the writer who writes the message, who writes those ideas, who gather those ideas into a text. And those ideas, when gathered to be written, they should not be written as a list of propositions, one by one, idea, and then another idea, then another idea. So the writer can't write the list of ideas without what? Without connecting those ideas to be coherent and cohesive. So writing a text should be coherent and cohesive, connected to each other. The writer should guide the readers throughout the lanes of the what? Throughout the lanes of the text, in order to what? In order to give his or her ideas coherently, yes, and facilitating. The writer should facilitate the process of what? The process of, yes, understanding and comprehending what? The message. So the writer writes those ideas, connect those ideas for the reader, to help the reader, to guide the reader, and to interact what? To interact his or her message with readers. So all meta-discourse writers agree that they distinguish between meta-discourse and proposition, and all of them agree that yes, that any text has a writer-reader message, cooperation and interaction. And I'm going to show you this example. If we look at this text has two parts. If you can see it very well, I colored those meta-discoursal items that function either interactively or yes, as interactive meta-discourse or interactional meta-discourse. So these colored words, for example, and here, unfortunately, definitely, it's my view that these are meta-discourse markers used by the writer to convey certain messages, to facilitate the process of understanding, to facilitate the process of communicating with readers. Communicating, if for example, a written text communicating with readers, if for example, the writer or yes, the interlocutors are speaking, so speakers with listeners. So these are samples. For example, putting and here to connect what? To show that there is some addition, okay? That there are some parallelism in meaning. There are some additional meaning, okay? Unfortunately, for example, here shows the, yes, unfortunately is an attitude marker, attitude meta-discourse marker, showing that there is an effective what? Effective feeling, effective attitude about this message. So meta-discourse, when used by the writer wants to convey an attitude, for example, towards either the message or towards the readers, okay? And here we have what? Here we have many other samples, definitely showing the, I think boosting. It's my view that showing hedges, and hedges show that the writer opens negotiation. The writer doesn't close it down, narrow it down, okay? And we have here many meta-discourse markers. Those meta-discourse markers used in this text are not used haphazardly. They are used with intention. They are used to convey certain attitudes towards the message and towards the receivers of the message. They are used to connect ideas together. They are used to guide the readers throughout the lanes of the what? Of this forest, of this yes, of this text, of these words. So here the black ink referred to propositions, non-topical, content, ideas, thoughts, and those colored words are meta-discourse markers, okay? So yes, on this basis alone, should, when it shows obligation, for example, according to one expert, evidential, yes, must, and some, yes, must, yes, could be showing obligations, some shows hedging, but shows contrastive or contrast, also addition and addition, thus you get a consequence, result, all showing showing a boost here, a booster. This question mark showing engagement markers, although, contrast, etc. Then consequencing, or the sequences of events, another addition, for example, code gloss, showing an example, explaining something. And why does the writer, for example, use, for example, in other words, put differently? These are used intentionally because the writer has in his mind the reader. He anticipates that the reader might not understand the message so clearly, so the writer wants to explain it further. So he uses what? He or she uses, code glosses. For example, even though many believe, and as a result, however, yes, I hope. The writer he announces a goal, and this is an interactive meta discourse. Those words written in red ink are interactive, and those written or colored in green are interactional meta discourse. All of us, ourselves, referring to maybe again might sometimes, or I here referring to the what? Referring to the writer. So it's an interactional meta discourse, and definitely it's self-mentioning. For example, here, accept the loss. The writer here interact directly with reader, telling him or her accept the loss of funds. So this is engagement marker, etc. So here we have what? In this text, in this example, we have two types or two divisions of the discourse. We have meta discourse, which is not proposition, and we have a proposition which is not meta discourse. But meta discourse markers are used here to help the reader understand the relations between these sentences, between these ideas, to guide them, to facilitate the process of comprehension for the readers, to help the readers understand better these relations, to make this text more coherent, more cohesive, tied well. Okay, and the rest refers to proposition, ideas, thoughts that are not, or that are what? That are expressing the ideas, thoughts, experience in the what? In the external world. Okay. Another key concept of meta discourse is the definition of Highland to meta discourse. In this definition, Highland has focused on the interpersonal function of meta discourse. Let me explain this particular point to you. Highland named his model of meta discourse as interpersonal from the very start. He was so clear about his model. And by the way, he criticizes the other models, other classifications before him, and presents his model. In this definition, as we are going to read it, he defines meta discourse as the cover term, the umbrella term for the self-reflective expressions, all those expressions used in the text that refer to the intrusion of the writer, intrusion of the speaker, that refer to the writer or the speaker, him or herself, themselves. Okay? So all those signal words, phrases, vocabularies referring to the presence of the writer are called meta-discourse. Okay? So the cover term for the self-reflective expressions used to negotiate interactional meanings. According to Highland, even the interactive meta-discourse markers are interpersonal, not like other meta-discourse researchers. For example, Van Koppel, Chris Mortal, and others. They consider that those meta-discourse that are used to organize the text are organizing the text, and they work at the level of the text. They don't work at the level of interaction. So this is what distinguishes the model of Highland from other models. Highland, because of his understanding the holistic meaning of meta functions by Halliday, he understood that even the textual, as they call textual and interpersonal, he understood that even those meta-discourse markers are working interpersonally, are working to join the text, to create a coherent text for the reader. So through these, or through using these meta-discourse markers, the writer is conversing with, the writer is interacting with, the writer is communicating with his readers or her readers. Okay? So, all meta-discourse to Highland are interpersonal, whether they are working at the level of the text, organizing the text, facilitating understanding of the relations, of the connections of ideas, connecting the ideas, making the text more coherent and cohesive to readers. These meta-discourse markers are called interactive, but they have an interpersonal function at the end of the day. Okay? So, assisting the writer or speaker to express a viewpoint and engage with readers as members of a particular community. So both interactive and interactional meta-discourse to Highland work interactional and work to interact with readers, to interact with listeners, and to assist the writer, the speaker, to communicate with readers and listeners, whether they are on at the level of the text or at the level of what? At the level of communication, the social function. They both function as interpersonal, communicating with the readers and listeners. The other key concept of meta-discourse in Highland's interpersonal model, or as a continuation for the key concept, is that, and I write here in other words, I want to explain what I already explained to make it easier for some listeners. My listeners, for example, I wrote in other words. I used what? In other words. In other words is what? Is an interactive meta-discourse. It is specifically a coded gloss. When I want, for example, when a writer or a speaker want to explain something, rephrase what he has already said, what he has already explained, written, okay? He wants to what? He wants to explain it, rephrase it, because he anticipates that there are some readers, some listeners might not yet understand what has already been said. So I said, in other words, meta-discourse is a means of interacting with readers through different signposts. It's exactly like the signpost for what? For the traffic signs. Okay? In order to know, for example, the traffic signs are used to help, to guide drivers and pedestrians the way. For example, if we have a dangerous area, there should be a sign there. to show you, to tell you that there is a dangerous area. You have not to cross this board, for example. Another example, you have to park your car here, not park it anywhere else. You have to slow down your speed, or you have a maximum of speed of, for example, 80 kilometers per hour, or we have many other examples. So meta-discourse works as signposts in the text. They are similar to the traffic signs for the road, for the drivers, for the pedestrians. Meta-discourse similarly works as signposts for the readers, for the listeners, to understand what does the writer intend. What does the writer intend? What does the writer want them to understand, want them to get at the end of reading this passage or this text? Okay, to communicate with and involve readers in taking part with writers to achieve a satisfactory level of communication. So the ultimate goal of using meta-discourse is to facilitate the process of communication. Keep this in mind, to facilitate the process of communication, not only for the readers, but for the writer as well, to organize his ideas, to organize ideas and to communicate with readers. And this is the ultimate goal is communication properly, and make the text as a lively text, as if you are discoursing with, conversing with, talking with your readers. Make it more lively, make it more physical, make your readers as physical. Okay, as I'm communicating, maybe it might be as I'm communicating with you now, maybe. Okay, yes. So among or as a continuation for the key concepts of the meta-discourse, we have the principles of the interpersonal model of Highland, of meta-discourse by Highland. What are the three principles that are used by Highland to distinguish, to identify, to recognize meta-discourse markers from proposition? And as we might know that meta-discourse markers are difficult to be recognized. Sometimes they are very difficult to be recognized. It depends on your analysis. We have to analyze the text, and meta-discourse, as you might know, is not fixed. We don't have, for example, a fixed list of meta-discourse. Meta-discourse is identified, recognized, and function. Meta-discourse function in context. Yes, meta-discourse functions in context. In context, we can identify which kind of which category of meta-discourse. Does it work as meta-discourse or as a proposition? And sometimes it becomes very difficult to identify this distinction. Okay, so the first principle is that meta-discourse is distinct from proposition. As I showed you the example, there are certain meta-discoursal items used in the text, and the rest of the text is what? The rest of the text is proposition. So this is the first principle, and this principle is common among all meta-discourse researchers, even those preceded Highland. Okay, the second principle is the distinct principle for Highland only. What is so special about Highland's interpersonal model is this principle: all meta-discourse involves writer-reader, yes, communication. So all meta-discourse, whether they are textual or interpersonal, as many meta-discourse researchers call them, all these Meta-discourse markers, items function interpersonally. They are interpersonal meta-discourse markers. Okay? And the last one, principle number 3, internal versus external relationships, which determines the meta-discourse functions, as I explained before, that meta-discourse should be known and identified, should be distinguished. Meta-discourse should be known, identified, distinguished, analyzed in context. We can't know whether it functions as meta-discourse or not until we see the context, the surrounding words, the function of this phrase or vocabulary items, for example. So these are the principles of 3 principles of meta-discourse in Hyland's interpersonal model of meta-discourse. And according to Hyland, yes, here we have 2 categories of meta-discourse. We have the interactive and interactional. And as I told you before, interactive and interactional, as Hyland said, he borrowed them. He borrowed these 2 terms from Thompson and Titella, 1995. Okay, he borrowed them and used them as his 2 major categories for meta-discourse. By interactive, he means those meta-discourse items that guide the reader through the text, so they work at the level of the text, as I explained earlier. And by interactional, those which work as to involve the reader in the text, to interact with to show interaction, to show sometimes the presence of the writer, the direct presence of the writer. And under each major category, we have 5 subcategories. We have transitions, we have frame markers, anaphoric markers, evidentials, coded glosses. Under the interactive, those subcategories work at the level of what? At the level of the text. Okay? To organize the text, to help the reader organize, understand the relations, as I explained. And under the interactional, we have hedges, boosters, and attitude markers, self-mentions, engagement markers. Those interactional markers are used especially in scholarly articles by advanced writers. Those writers who write for journals. They most of the time need to know the functions of those interactional markers, interactional meta-discourse markers, because these meta-discourse markers distinguish the advanced style of writers. In the scholarly writings, we mostly use hedges. Sometimes we use boosters. We use hedges to show our readers and our listeners that our opinions are open to negotiation. We are open to different or a variety of arguments. And sometimes we use boosters properly to show that we are emphasizing on certain points. And sometimes we use attitude markers to show our attitudes towards either the message we are writing or towards readers or some other writers maybe. And the interactive meta-discourse are used, for example, transitions, showing contrast, showing comparison, contrast, frame markers showing consequences, showing, for example, the different stages, or moving from stage to stage, moving from layer to layer in the discourse. Evidentials referring to other writers, coded glosses explaining, rephrasing what has already been said, anaphoric markers, frame markers, referring to other parts of the text. Sometimes we say in section or in the following section. So these are, I guess, frame markers referring to other parts of of your text. So the first key concept was the holistic understanding. The holistic understanding of the meta-functions of language. The second key concept is whether to understand, whether to get meta-discourse as a primary or secondary to discourse. Is it inferior to discourse? Does discourse represent the superior part of the discourse, and meta-discourse is something inferior, something secondary, or they are equal on the scale of the text? Some writers, and especially those preceding Hyland and Mao also, they always refer to it as secondary, or most of the time, or almost, yes, to use Hedges, to be fair. Almost they refer to meta-discourse as a secondary level of discourse. It is about discourse. So they understood that meta-discourse is like the glue that connects the ideas. It is not so essential in the text. On the other hand, we have Hyland and Mao who rejects this idea. Okay? Hyland and Mao see that meta-discourse should be equal to proposition, because the meaning of the text is not confined to proposition. The meaning of the text is not equal to proposition. The meaning of the text is the combination of a proposition and meta-discourse, the combination of, those meta-discoursal items with those ideas, propositions, content. The combination of these two layers of discourse, or these two equal, what we call equal discourse parts, convey, yield, result in the meaning, the whole meaning of the text. So Mao doesn't only, so this is a meta-discourse I used here, doesn't only discard the notion that meta-discourse holds a secondary importance to discourse as a secondary discourse, rather showing contrast, okay? She regards it as more specialized. Mao considers that meta-discourse is not equal, not sometimes equal to discourse or to proposition. She sometimes regards it as what? As something specialized, and might be higher than discourse, okay? Or at least equal to primary discourse itself. Hyland likewise, to show similarity, similarity of ideas, I used likewise, transition words, rejects that meta-discourse holds a secondary status to primary discourse. As Mao, Hyland also argues that though meta-discourse and proposition are understood as distinct planes of discourse, they both complement each other and work in combination, or in combination, not in separation, to produce the whole meaning of discourse. So they work together to produce, to yield the meaning intended by the writer, by the speaker. They should work together. They help each other. Now the third and last, inshallah, it will be shorter phase. The impact of meta-discourse on EFL academic writing and reading comprehension. What is the benefit? What is the use of teaching meta-discourse to EFL students? What is the benefit of teaching it explicitly through writing and through reading comprehension? So as I experienced and as my students experience, mere discourse markers are very helpful, useful in improving the understanding of the text, analyzing the text, and helping them writing with the reader in their mind, with the reader in their mind. Yani, I mean that my EFL students, when I explain mere discourse, the 10 subcategories to them, when I explain this 10 subcategories to them, when I analyzed certain texts using identifying mere discourse, analyzing different samples, model essays, paragraphs to them, they become aware of mere discourse and their functions and their use. They use them more in the writing, and this helps improve their writing ability, and helps their reading comprehension as well. Okay, so mere discourse affects both the quality and the quantity of EFL students' writing. How the quality and the quantity? How does mere discourse affect the quality of writing? How does mere discourse affect the quantity of the writing? Something interesting. As regards the quality in writing refers to how students use a variety, different options of mere discourse markers. A variety of mere discourse markers. Instead of using, for example, at the lower level, and also but, most of the time they are using these connectors. They become aware that there are different types, a variety of mere discourse markers at the level of text, interactive mere discourse, and at the level of interacting with the readers. They become to know, for instance, in other words, however, nonetheless, for example, yes, I have, we have different examples as a result, consequently, yes, accordingly, hence, subsequently, etc. Namely, such as until now, in a brief, in summary, overall, similarly, etc. Okay? Around, about, nearly, approximately, clearly, actually, should, must, ought to, remarkably, essentially, fortunately, unfortunately. There are many variations of mere discourse markers to be used for them to convey their messages, or to decode the messages conveyed to them by the writer. Okay, organize the text, address the readers, and guide them throughout the unfolding discourse to facilitate the process of interpretation. Facilitate the task of interpretation, the task of comprehension, the task of communication, okay, with the readers. Understanding the message to finally present coherent and cohesive text. Also, it improves the quantity in writing. How does mere discourse improve quantity? There's a study by, Beretta and Scarmalia, I think 1987 or 87, yes, 1987. They have children writing their texts, and they observed those children. Some of those children stopped writing, and some other children continued. Those children who stopped writing, the teacher gave them sentence starters to start with, to trigger their mind, to trigger their thoughts, to trigger their ideas, to stimulate their ideas in them. So they gave them those sentence starters like, but, however, in addition, I think, I believe. When they gave them those phrases, those mere discourse markers, they continued writing. So these mere discourse markers helped those children triggering their thoughts, stimulating their thoughts to write, to be written, okay? And as I experienced with my, students, as they clearly expressed this, they told me that in an interview, that those meta-discourse markers stimulate in them thoughts, in them. And instead of stopping or stop writing, for example, they write any of these meta-discourse markers to trigger their thoughts and write more and more. For example, write in other words. For example, for instance, this helps my students trigger their thoughts and continue writing rather than stopping or get stuck. So they are provokers for extending ideas. Quality in writing and reading, meta-discourse contributes to coding and decoding. We use meta-discourse to code certain messages in order to be decoded by readers and listeners. In discourse, in other words, meta-discourse is neither the glue nor the secondary layer of discourse. It is a primary, or as primary as many other linguistic components. Okay, quality in writing and reading also, meta-discourse awareness might create physical-like interaction between writers and readers. I always recommend my students to imagine the readers, to address their audience, imagine them, whether they are addressing, for example, teachers or students or relatives or friends or whatever. So I recommend them to imagine those persons negotiating with them in order to make a lively text for them. They use meta-discourse lively. They use meta-discourse properly to interact with the readers or listeners. Quality in writing and reading, proper use of meta-discourse writing creates a reader-friendly. When we read, for example, a piece of text, and the writer uses so clear meta-discourse markers, the reader will feel that it's a reader-friendly. The reader feels that he's interacting with his writer, interacting with the message and interacting with the writer. And this helps reader comprehension. This helps decoding the messages and interacting with the message and the writer. And also, I think finally, quality in reading, meta-discourse awareness raises students' passion for analyzing the text, to participate in meaning construction through analytical reading, observing the moves in discourse rather than being confined to the passive conventional reading habits, such as the reliance on translating the text only. Sometimes we find readers are translating, not interested in analyzing the text in order to understand it very well. But through understanding, analyzing the meta-discourse and know the functions of those meta-discourse, readers will be acquainted with, or readers will, understand better the messages. Okay? And in summary, meta-discourse is highly influential in improving writing quality and the quantity, as well as enhancing reader comprehension. It should be handled carefully within an explicit instruction in an EFL context, especially in an EFL context, because native speakers have certain compensational tools to understand these texts. But EFL needs more. EFL students need more meta-discourse. But we should be careful about overusing or underusing meta-discourse, because the overuse of meta-discourse will cover the content, will bury the content. And this, or the overuse of meta-discourse, gives an indication to the reader, to the listener, that the writer has no ideas to communicate. And also we should also yes, avoid the underuse of meta discourse, because this will make an ambiguous this will distort the communication with readers and listeners. And thank you very much, and I hope that you get interested in my topic, and thank you for your attentive listening, and I'm happy to answer any question about this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for presenting such a valuable and interesting lecture.
Thank you.
I also have to praise the presentation show. It's very nice.
Thank you very much. Most welcome.
So anyone have a question? Anyone have a question?
Any question, please, about meta discourse, writing in meta discourse, reading in meta discourse? Yeah.
You can turn on your mic and ask the doctor any question you want. So it seems like there's no question.
Okay, it seems that there is no question.
Yes.
If there's no question, so it seems that either all of you understood the topic very well, or it's very difficult to be understood. Or you might not be interested in the topic. I'm just kidding.
Okay. We got a question from Saad Chasib.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ala, and it was nice presentation indeed, a very interesting topic. But I would like to suggest, if this is a title of a research paper, I think you should add the impact of explicit instruction of discourse, meta discourse on EFL writing, rather than meta discourse itself.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually, I made my PhD on meta discourse and the explicit instruction of writing on EFL students. Okay. So actually, I made my PhD on this particular topic, the explicit instruction of meta discourse and its effect on the writing ability and reading comprehension of, specifically the writing ability. And I'm working on a paper on the impact of. Now I'm working on a paper on the impact of meta discourse on the reading comprehension of my students. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. I mean, this very point, and it is not meta discourse itself, but the explicit instruction of meta discourse. This is my point.
Yeah. I understood your point, and I did an explicit instruction already. I did it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the results the findings I presented here, some of them are from my EFL students on whom I did the explicit instruction, and it is very detailed. It could be done in many sessions to explain it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Saad Chashif. Any other questions? So now I'm gonna end this session.
Okay.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of the attendees, and have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ala, for this interesting lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Majid. I'm very happy to present my topic here.
I'm very pleased to you.
Thank you very much. Most welcome. ان شاء الله راح تكون مسجله هذه
نعم.
الفيرتشوال سيشن.
نعم
إن شاء الله.
مسجل.
اه